All right, everybody, we're going to get back to business here. If we can get settled. We have drawn the dreaded post-lunch session here, but hopefully everyone's ready. We're going to start the session here on housing counseling, grant, financial reporting, and voucher payment process, and what our goal is to do an overview of those topics, cover questions and answers. We're also going to hit topics such as budget compliance, grant drawdowns, record keeping, agency post-grant monitoring, so we've got a lot to cover. Let me introduce, we're going to be in good hands here with two of my colleagues. On my immediate left here is Shay Williams. You didn't meet her this morning, but she was on a plane when we did introductions, but she's here now. And this is Rebecca McLean next to her, and they're both in OPGA with me. Happy to have them both. So they asked me to do a little housekeeping before I turn it over to them. They wanted me to remind everyone that you have to stay on the first floor unless you have an escort. So for example, we said there's a little coffee shop, soda shop type thing on the third floor, and you're welcome to go. But to go there or to other floors, you have to get an escort, and I think you do that. The desk, my understanding is the desk immediately out this door, there'll be someone there who can help you and set up an escort. So hopefully that makes sense. And without further ado, let me turn it over to these guys.
Good afternoon. It is afternoon, isn't it? I'm Shay Williams, and I am, as Brian said, part of the Office of Policy and Grant Administration. I may be one or two of your point of contact for the Office of Housing Counseling, and we're going to just, want to have a conversation basically about quarterly performance reports and some issues we've seen as far as the performance reports and our vouchers and submitting of the vouchers. And at the end, then we will actually go through some scenarios where you guys get to be us and find some issues with the documentation and then be able to talk and ask questions about it. So I'm going to dig right in here. We're on the quarterly performance reports. And basically, HUD requires all of our agencies to do quarterly performance reports. And a lot of you sometimes get confused about, is that the 9902? Is that pertaining to my grant? The 9902 is required by all agencies. And that kind of helped us to, be able to gauge your performance, make sure that the activities that are being paid for, that are being funded, are the activities that are allowed within our program. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one. If you guys go back after the agenda, we're going to be taking all of our rules and regulations from several areas. And this is a reference for you guys, so if you need to go back and look at any of these rules, any of these regulations, you will have them. There are housing counseling requirements. One is the 2 CFR Part 200, and that's where you see specific information about the grant agreements. The NOFA, so our Notice of Funding Availability. Our HUD handbook, you know that as the 7610.1 Revision 5. And then we have the grant agreement. And the grant agreement has payment request and also Article 11 on reporting. So we use this information that you guys give us in your quarterly reports to demonstrate to Congress and all of those that we report to the impacts of our National Housing Counseling Program. So those reports are very important to us and to the funding for the program. Therefore, the data should be accurate and complete, and we want to make sure that what you give to us is definitely accurate, because that impacts your funding. And a lot of you probably have realized that now, especially after this, the last funding period and probably this funding period, you will realize that your numbers directly, impact your funding. So it's very important that they're accurate, that you're using your CMS accurately, your client management systems, to make sure you're reporting to HCS accurately as well. So we want to make sure that you guys know also that we are very proficient in our duties. So helping you to make sure and manage your reports is something that we do and something that we actually take very seriously. A couple of the things that we want you to realize is that those programs and your reporting help us to track your program goals. That's, and help you to do that. Also, it helps to keep performance on par to meet your stated goals. So you can see where you're falling short. If you are reporting accurately, your reports will tell you whether you're meeting your goals and what you probably need to do in order to try to, get on target with your goals. And also, adjusting your work plan is necessary. One of the things that I've seen with doing performance reviews is that agencies have either stop doing certain counseling activities or have added to those activities and have not, adjusted their work plan. And so you want to make sure that your activities are also reflected in your work plan. Your current activities are reflected in your work plan. So all of those reporting help us to help you in keeping accurate reports and keeping all of your program compliance up to date. So now we're going to talk about our grant quarterly reports, which is different from the 9902. So unless you are a funded HUD grantee, you would not be completing a grant quarterly report or performance report. So, of course, the reporting periods and the due dates for these reports are subject to change. So the places that you would find that information would be where the NOFA and also your grant agreement. And of course, just confirming it with your point of contact with HUD. We want to make sure that if you have any issues or any doubts about reporting dates, because sometimes they change. We may have a 1 year or 12-month grant. We may have an 18-month grant. We may have a 24-month grant. So you want to make sure you're confirming those reporting dates with your POC, your point of contact, with the NOFA agreement, and also with the NOFA publication. So the final quarter performance report, that is very important, and I see a lot of agencies miss that as well. That's one of the issues that we would see come up. Your final quarterly report, performance report, as far as grant reporting, has to include a final narrative. And that final narrative also helps us to help you. That final narrative helps us to find out, what were your goals? Did you meet your goals? If you did meet your goals, or if you didn't meet your goals, what were your constraints? What were your issues? And what did you do to combat your issues so you can still meet your goals? So that final narrative is very important, not just to us, but to you as well. Also, when is it due? So the final quarterly grant report is due 90 days after you fully expended your grant. So let's say you fully expended your grant March 30th. Then it would be done April, May, June 30th. No later than June 30th, that final report and that narrative would be due to your point of contact, to HUD. So it's very important that you keep up with those dates, and it's when you fully expend your grant. So it may be a totally different date from another agency, because you may expend your grant totally, faster than they do. So you want to make sure that that date you really remember. Finally, the narrative must include information on addressing impediments to fair housing This allows HCAs to explain problems or challenges that impacted performance under the grant award. That is very essential, because what you don't want is for you to not meet your goals and then we don't know why. We don't have a way to gauge what was happening, because then we can't assist with that, and you can't assist yourself if you're not gauging all of those things in your final report. So examples of challenges that an agency may encounter would be significant increase in home sales that may lead to unaffordable housing. That could be a huge issue in your area. Another example that we've seen is decrease in home sales where rampant foreclosures depress property values and consequently fuel increased foreclosure activity. Those are significant challenges in a lot of our communities. And so these are just some examples. You may have other challenges as well. Finally, that final narrative allows you to request input from us. And so it also provides an opportunity to explain some of your major program accomplishments. We want to know about your accomplishments. We want to know your challenges over the entire grant period, not just the final quarter. I've seen some of my final narrative from some of my agencies that they're just reporting their issues they had just their last quarter that they're reporting. We want to know over the entire period of the grant what issues you were having, what accomplishments you had. Be detailed. You don't want it to be cookie cutter. You want to be detailed and showing us, displaying to us your accomplishments and your impediments. So finally, you also need to include in your report a final SF 425 and a HUD 424CB. The 424 is that budget form, and the SF 425 is the federal financial report. That also, a final one has to be included also with your final narrative and your final grant quarterly report. Now I will turn over this presentation to Rebecca McLean.
Hey, excuse me one second. Before you do that, I realize they only gave me a couple jobs and I already missed one of them. I think we were supposed to do a question from Shauna at the beginning. Should we stop and do that now? Okay, sorry. That was my fault. Sorry, Rebecca.
Mentimeter is flexible. Okay, so get out your smart devices. We have another. This one is really fun. If you need to log in with the code again, it's in the upper right-hand corner, and make sure you go to menti, menti.com, and put in that code. So we want to know, this is pick the winner. Who spends the most amount of time on the voucher payment process? Is it HUD? Is it those that work in ELOCs? Or is it housing counseling agencies like yourself? Or your network agencies? So who's the winner? Who do we think? Right. Oh, there's 30 votes in, but we don't know who the winner is till you put them all of you have to respond. Oh, yes. Yes, we'll just be sitting here until you all respond. until the poll closes or pick the winner closes. I know this was Jane Sharita said we had to pick a winner. We had to have at least one question that was a pick the winner because it was way too fun. Okay? How are we doing? You know, there was 59 of you on the last one, or maybe 60. So there's a few of you that we're missing here. I know, it's painful, isn't it? Who do you think the winner is? Okay. All right, Rachel, you want to go ahead and close it? We'll know who the winner is. Agencies wins. Okay, and I'll turn it back to Rebecca to talk about get confetti and everything. And I'll be back up here for scenario one.
Okay,
thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Shauna. Thank you all. Oh, wait, there we go. Okay. I just wanted to touch base a little bit about our HUD voucher payment system issues and solutions. Brian and Phyllis both mentioned this morning in their plenaries that we're doing a lot of kind of looking at processes and making them more streamline and soliciting feedback. So part of what we would love to hear from you, either in the Q&A or Mentimeter or grab one of us afterwards, is things that you think aren't working for you. And we've done a lot. Shay and the rest of our voucher team and I have done a lot of digging into things like, why do we do this way? Is it because it's always been done this way? Is it because it was easy 20 years ago and things have changed? Kind of answering those questions of trying to figure out why does OHC do it one way and CPD do it another way and public housing do it another way, and trying to figure out what we really need to be working for everyone the most efficiently. So in that process, we have dug into some documentation issues, and these are things that have arisen as part of the initial review and things that we're working on already. We wanted to bring them to your attention. So things like documentation that were submitted with your original vouchers doesn't include breakdowns of subgrantees requesting other expenses. Other expenses is not a catch-all for just throwing whatever you don't feel like putting in another line. It has to be broken out. You have to make sure it's clear. So the breakdown of expenses were only an overview, only providing the total amount that each subgrantee charged, and not a breakout of that. And then another issues that we've been finding are inconsistencies in documenting grant expenditures. So, from agency to agency, in subgrantees, and one intermediary does it this way, another one does it another way. Inconsistency in how you're documenting grant expenditures. Sometimes agencies document more than they bill, which is confusing to us because we don't need to see all that if you're not billing us for it. Sometimes agencies overbill to make it easier for them to reallocate unused funds, which is not something we recommend. So it's not always clear how our funds are being used, and we know a lot of agencies use our funds as a small portion of your total expenditures, and so we need to see how HUD funds are used relative to the rest of the funds that you use to run your programs. And then the methodology for allocating costs to HUD grant are not always documented clear and precise, and methodology of how you came to the dollar amount that you came to show your POC is really important, so they can trace it and understand how you came to that number. And so some solutions that we've come up with so far are things like grantees should review their expense types contributing to another category to determine compliance relative to your funded note for year and to CFR 200. And that swirl slide at the beginning kind of gives you a breakdown of all the places where we talk about vouchers and the requirements of those. So you can go back to those little bullet points in the swirl slide and go to the specific area of what we're asking for under the NOFA, so that might change from year to year, under your grant agreement, which might change from year to year, the overarching requirements into of CFR 200, which don't change very often. So kind of taking that extra time to review to make sure that you're in compliance with the year-to-year changes and also the overarching changes. Grantees should be providing a breakdown of expenses and providing an overview of expense types in the other expenses category, so we know what expenses are and whether or not we can determine whether or not they're eligible. Don't overbill. Please don't overbill. And then allocation should be done according to a HUD-approved methodology. And so you need to work with your POC to, if you haven't had an approved methodology, and that could be as simple as direct expenses plus your indirect cost allocation rate, which has been approved, or it could be, a more complicated breakdown depending on what your specific situation is. But that's something that your POC needs to look at to make sure that you're working under the same assumptions. Otherwise, your POC will send you back. Go ahead, next slide. And then also, things that we're proposing are the grantee should review and provide details on cost types in order to approve everything, assume that everything were eligible and properly allocated, and then double checking allocation methodology on things like payroll and taxes. And so we see a lot of times that there are some people who are 100% funded under our program, some people who are 75% funded, some people who are 50% funded, and that kind of gets murky as you go along through your program year. So making sure that you're double checking, unless you have, a lockdown Excel chart with the calculations never change and it's perfect, the double checking is really important for us because we'll be double checking you and then coming back and forth. I know some agencies can get things cleared right away and others go back and forth with their POCs to make sure that they understand what's going on with all of that. So those are some of our situations, and I'm going to pass it back to Shay to have you walk through the scenarios that we we want you to dig into a little bit.
So you will find your scenarios on the left side. It should be right behind your presentation packet. So there are 2 scenarios described on a 1-pager in your folder. Actually, it's several pages, but the first one, scenario 1, is on the 1-pager, and it's front and back. So just want to make sure you know it's double-sided. So we have allowable versus unallawables, and then just voucher issues. And so since you all are at a table, you feel free to work as a group. We're going to give you, I think it's 10 minutes. We're going to start with 10 minutes, and if you guys need more time. But you can work as a group, and then we will go through the questions at the end.
And scenario 1 has specific questions.
Yes.
Scenario 2, we just want you to find all the errors.
So did you guys hear Rebecca? On scenario 1, there are specific questions at the top of the front page. And scenario 2, we just want you to find the error. So scenario 2, you are a HUD POC, and we want you to find the errors in scenario 2. And scenario 2 includes your ELOCS voucher, your payment voucher, and the 2 budget forms behind it. We're going to give you guys 5 more minutes. Is that enough time to complete? We're going to give you 5 more minutes. Is that enough time? That's enough time? You need 10 minutes? Okay.
Okay.
Oh, he's talking about booth. Yeah.
Good question. So, as far as that contract goes, I think that contract's done, and we have to enter into a new contract with another organization. But I'm not aware if it is yet or how but how you access that TA, or we'll get that figured out. Contract
Somebody else says, well, we complained about it and we do it differently.
Okay. Thanks for asking that. Okay, we're going to go ahead and grab some of your hard work via Mentimeter. So please have your phones ready. We thought this was the best way to do this type of activity with y'all in a large group. So we want to know first, and we're only going to do questions related to scenario 1. Let me just make sure I say that. We will move on to scenario 2 afterwards. So scenario 1, so the first question is, what items are not allowed in this budget? And this is the ever popular word cloud, so we'll see those of you that say the same thing, the bubble will get larger in terms of the word will get larger. I think they're bubbles. I don't know. Okay. Right. I don't believe mental anguish was on that budget. Okay. So what are we seeing, folks? What are we seeing here?
So we're talking about this particular budget, and please note it's for fiscal year 18 and to current. So we're not talking about FY17, FY16. I saw some faces when they looked at the budget like, oh goodness. So, so FY18, remember we made some changes, yeah. And so this is what we're referring to as far as the budget is what we're referring to. So I do see telephone, equipment, maintenance, rent. Those are correct.
Postage.
Yes, postage, insurance. Those are absolutely correct. You are allowed capacity building. You are allowed training, because I see capacity building up there. And you are allowed travel.
If you would like to go to the microphone, you can do that. And I appreciate the word clarifying, because we have a few more questions we'd like to ask you about your hard work.
So, we were trying to determine what the difference was between capacity building and training.
Oh, sure. Sure. Okay.
But for the record, we did say they were both approved because
Yeah.
it seemed
Yes.
like.
So training would be, training. You are, certifications, your continuing education,
Right.
all of that. Capacity building would be what you would be doing to grow the agency. So, help build capacity for the agency. So what things in capacity building what example of capacity building, what is your I'm trying to figure out what is the confusion. So what things in capacity building are you asking about?
I think for us as a group, we thought it was probably going to be more in line with certification and
Sure.
training. So the buildup of that counselor from when they're in training mode to when they're actually full-blown counseling, like maybe that would be in it, but we were trying to figure out
What the difference was.
capacity building that would be for that.
Yes. Yes, you can use it for direct marketing. So, yes. But all of the things that you were talking about as far as the certification or training is supposed to go under the training. So the certification for a counselor, their continuing education, anything that's education would go under training.
Okay. Okay, good.
Yes.
We'll have Q&A at the end, so unless you have a clarifying question, which I'm going to ask you to go to the microphone, we should probably keep moving. Do you have a clarifying question, Dana? Microphone. Thank you.
So does that mean it relates to like hiring new staff? Would that be capacity building, looking to hire new staff? I guess that's the question, the clarification question.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Capacity building? Hiring new staff.
Hiring new staff.
Wait, so Dana, you're asking hiring, yeah, but hiring, is that a salary or like costs incurred in the hiring process or? Yeah.
So it sounds like, so we can keep moving. It sounds like maybe just a little bit more guidance on that might be helpful.
Right. Let us
Sounds like
get
it.
back to you on that one.
Unless it's specifically not, the CFR, subpart D does allow for hiring as long as it's specifically for the program.
Okay.
So
Hiring specifically for the program.
housing counselors, all of that is allowed.
Okay. Okay, so it
Right.
sounds like specific to your housing counseling program, that would be considered capacity building. So thank you. Okay, let's move on to the second question. So this is worded, I think, a little differently than what we meant it, but where were you able to obtain this information? So what we're trying to test here is, how did you know that some of these costs were ineligible? So where did you read that? Where did you pick that up? Like, how did you know, basically? And it's open-ended, okay? Right, it could be many. So
I heard someone say the grant agreement.
yeah,
Did someone say the grant agreement?
yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's
the
correct.
NOFA, very
The
good.
NOFA.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, perfect.
So,
Yes.
So
I'm
those
assu-
things can be found on the HUD Exchange. Yes, hi Buzz.
Hi.
Thanks for using the microphone.
we submit this in a quarterly report.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we be hearing back if we've done something wrong?
Yes,
So we can assume we've done it correctly if we don't hear a correction.
correct.
Okay.
And if you get your money.
Yes.
Yeah,
And then you get your money.
yeah. Okay. Okay, great. All right, this one's gonna be fun. You ready for this? Oh, there's more coming in. Webinar, email from POC. Okay, lots of good responses to where you found out
Oh,
about.
Yellow Pages is not.
People like to have a lot of fun with this, we know. Okay, we're going to move on to the third Mentimeter question. So what's the actual percentage of the indirect cost rate used in administrative costs? And this is a multiple choice. So you have a 25% chance, right? No, 30%, 33% chance of getting it right. Sorry, I swear I can do math. Okay.
So I see,
Lots of people think it's 10%.
yes. So why 10%? Why would you think it was 10%? I'm just curious, since most of the answers are 10%.
Yeah. There's 30% that think it's the 28.56%. Is that because it was like down further in the scenario? Somebody
So,
had already
right.
done that math for you?
Right. So the correct answer is 28.56. It's listed on the budget. That was just and I knew it would be so easy, it would be hard, but it's the 28.56. That was their indirect cost rate.
Russell's going to come up and ask a clarifying question. Go ahead.
But if you divide 15,650 by 2856, you don't come up with a number that actually makes sense.
Right.
So it's miscalculated.
Right.
Okay, just as long as I just
Right.
as long as I
but
know
just
that.
assume, and that was something we should have said too. Just assume that the calculations
errors.
are correct.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
may be a few errors with us going back, tweaking it, because actually the original question was a lot harder, and we had you doing calculations, which would probably have taken all day. So we just made it simple and listed it in the actual budget. And that's normally where we look for the indirect cost rate. Then as a POC, I have to go and test it and do exactly what he did, and to make sure that you're using that's the rate that was used in the calculations.
And you
So,
tried to stick
yes.
to an exact
Right.
like replica of what you've received in the past.
So also, this is almost an exact replica of an agency's report and calculations.
Okay.
Maybe it was sent back.
Okay, folks, let's move on to the next one. So, how can the intermediary correct the budget? So this is open-ended. You can provide multiple answers, if I remember correctly.
So what can you do to correct the budget?
Amend. Admend, okay? Resubmit. Okay?
Okay.
Provide TA.
With permission, yeah, with permission from your POC, you definitely can amend it and resubmit. Has anyone had to do that before? And actually, what specifically did you do when you went back to revise the budget? What specifically did you do?
Yeah. And
So-
just go ahead and submit. Guess again.
Yes. Correct indirect rate reimbursement. So, kinda, is what we're looking for, is that because of their indirect cost rate, maybe the dollar amount that they were, for these items, they were put back in their indirect cost rate.
Okay, everyone's laughing at the much prayer, and then it's gone.
That was
Much
too
prayer
funny.
to the HUD Heavenly Father, so.
Right.
Okay.
And that would be great too. But I've had an agency who only used maybe 14% of their indirect cost rate that they had. And so they were able to, redirect the items, not necessarily the actual line item itself, but the dollar amounts, and use more of their indirect cost rate. Because you can use less of your indirect cost rate. So, and they were not using all of it. So that's what they did to correct it.
Okay, so panelists, would you like to do the last question for scenario 1 about other issues, or you want to move on to scenario 2?
Do we have time?
If folks have questions, which they might, we're at 2:05, so we only have 10 minutes left before the next panel. So,
Okay.
so
So
what would you like to
want
do?
us to just tell them the answer?
I think maybe just move on to scenario 2, and
Yeah.
then you guys can ask questions. Sound
Yeah.
good? Okay, great. I am sitting down. Thank you.
So remember, scenario 2, we want you to find the errors. So find the errors in the voucher and the 2 expense forms.
And if you've already done that, feel free to line up at the mic if
Yeah.
you want to just rattle off some errors you found.
So if you're done, Rebecca said, if you have completed scenario 2 and you want to line up at the mic to give us some
Come on, Dana.
answers, you can do that.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay. You want to start? Let me see if you can find out the first one.
Well, I mean, are they?
I'll give him like
Like a minute?
1 minute.
Okay, which way?
So that, and then this was, that was the amount that should be billed.
That should have been up here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That what should be billed. It's 2:06.
Yeah.
I got 1 minute.
Capacity building, my board calls capacity building, going out.
About scenario 2, and then ask if there are any questions.
Say a couple of words about scenario 2 and then ask if you got any questions.
Okay. What are my words? How's everyone doing with scenario 2? Anyone find any errors yet? No one?
Does anyone have any questions pertaining to scenario 2? I know it's confusing, and that's because there's errors. So it should look pretty confusing. So if we look at the voucher, if we look at the ELOX voucher, can anyone tell me from looking at the expense documents, can you tell me, is there anything incorrect on the ELOX voucher? What's incorrect? The amount, very good. So what amount should it be? No. So the voucher should be with the January through March 2019. It should, yes. So actually, it should be $131,679.83. $131,679.83.
That's on the second Excel chart under the 60% column, January to March 2019. Oh, you can hear me? Sorry, that 131,679.83 is at the bottom of the column on the second Excel chart, the 60% column that says January to March 2019. Because they've submitted this, where's the date? May 9th. So you know that it's not the quarter that they're currently in.
Right. And on the quarterly report, total expenditure summary, that's incorrect because, right, because there are some unallowables in there. Rents, depreciation, dues, all of that is not allowed. So does anyone have any questions on any of that? Have I totally confused you? No?
Yeah.
We just have a couple more minutes, so if there are any questions about that scenario or anything else in the presentation, we have time for one or two. So,
Yeah.
and if you want to you can come up to the microphone. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
We put you all to sleep after lunch. Dana, you don't have a question? Come on.
No questions? No questions?
All right, no questions. Thank you, and we're gonna transition to the next presentation.
Thanks, everyone.
I don't know if we could see.
Yeah, oh, that would have been very
So should I just get us started? Is it 12:15? Is it 2:15?
It's 2:11.
Oh, in a few minutes. I need to pull this towards me or what?
I don't know. I don't think they're on. Are they on? All right, I think we're about ready to start. I don't think the microphones are on. Are you on? They're on? Okay. I think we're about ready to start our next session. I think we're ready to start our next session. Great. If everyone could take their seats, please.
And that's because it is.
So in this next session, we wanted to take a few minutes to talk to you about using social media to increase awareness and visibility of housing counseling. Can you all hear me? Yes. Great, great. All right. Here at OHC, I think some of you probably know that for the past 4 years, 3 to 4 years, we have been hard at work at looking at ways that we can increase people's awareness and visibility of the benefits of housing counseling. And so we wanted to take some time today to talk to you about the things we've been working on, and we also want to give you an opportunity to work with us, help you understand how we might partner together to help more people understand how important housing counseling is. Our agenda specifically is we're going to provide an update on awareness and visibility efforts, and that's going to include looking at some of the research we've done, looking at some of our findings. We're also going to walk through messaging and some of the materials we've developed. And then Lauren Banks, who's with Creative Marketing Resources, she's going to talk about the importance of using social media to move the message forward. And Jennifer Murphy, who's with HomeSmart New York, she'll drill down even more and provide a kind of mini how-to session on using social media and explaining some of the best techniques that can help you be more effective. Before we get started and I walk through the rest of the presentation, I want to tell you a little bit more about Jennifer and Lauren. Lauren is a 15-year veteran communications and marketing professional. She's currently serving as Vice President of Account Services at Creative Marketing Resources. Jennifer, who I think some of you probably know, is Executive Director of HomeSmart New York, and she has 25 years of nonprofit and community development banking experience. So an overview of our strategy. So this strategy was really born out of a desire, a recognition of the need to educate consumers. And I think a lot of us recognize that we really gained an awareness of how important it is to have educated consumers when it comes to making housing finance decisions as a result of the recession in 2008. It really highlighted the importance of housing counseling. When we started out on this strategy, we decided we had a couple of objectives, and they are to increase stakeholder awareness of housing counseling services, to positively change the perceptions of housing counseling services, to motivate behaviors that lead to acquiring housing counseling, and to partner with stakeholders so they can more effectively disseminate information. The first thing we did was research. We wanted to gain a better understanding of what people think about housing counseling, what they know, what they don't know, what they associate it with. And so for the research, we really did a couple of different things. We conducted 25 focus groups and surveys among lenders, realtors. We also conducted focus groups among oversight agencies, including the GSEs, FHFA, Federal Reserve, and CFPB. We did focus groups with consumers as well, particularly first-time home buyers. Did some mystery shopping, actually went out to HUD housing counseling agencies and acted as first-time home buyers to gain an understanding of the customer experience when they visit a housing counseling agency. And we did a communications audit of all of the Office of Housing Counseling materials. So we looked at all the brochures, we looked at the websites, we looked at mentions of housing counseling at HUD in the media, in social media, in newspapers, and here's what we found. We found that there's a negative perception of the term counselor. People use the word counselor when they have a problem they want to solve. We also found that consumers seek and they value impartial advice, and they perceive housing counselors as being able to offer that. We also found that despite some misperceptions about HUD, like HUD is Section 8 or HUD is only for low-income people, HUD's name is valued among consumers, and it's kind of seen as trusted and credible. We also found that stakeholders have distinct value propositions. They value housing counseling for different reasons. Consumers value impartial advice. Lenders and realtors value the time savings and money they think they can get with a consumer who's better prepared for the housing process. And the last thing we found is that consumers are generally not aware at all of housing counseling. So some of the comments we heard specifically were, I think housing counseling is a best kept secret. Is HUD for Section 8? You guys should get in front of the consumer at the very beginning of the home buying process. Or, I didn't really know these programs existed. I think the comments really tell us when we get the specific comments from consumers that there's really a big need to sort of proactively go out and reach consumers. And that's what we've decided to do with our strategy. So with the research findings, we then moved to how do we use this information to change the way housing counseling is perceived. And the first thing we thought we would do was develop messaging. And by messaging, I mean not just what we say, but how we perceived, how do we look. So we started out with a visual identity guide. You can take a look at the guide. Our guide emphasized a few things that we think are really important. We have a consistent color palette. You can see that the colors are clean, they're bright and modern. We hope that they project images of strength, power, balance, dependability, and trustworthiness. We use these colors to create a consistent and unified look for the Office of Housing Counseling. We also have a strong graphic element, the roof line. The roof line symbolizes protection and the idea of offering information under one roof, and obviously the obvious reference to housing. We took the identity guide and developed what we call a graphic identifier. It's very much like a logo for the Office of Housing Counseling, and in time we think it'll become our good housekeeping seal of approval. We hope that when consumers see materials with the roof line, they will immediately recognize it as representing housing counseling, and they will find it trustworthy and dependable. When they see it, folks will know they can trust it. We applied our new graphic identity to a large number of new materials. And so I want to walk through the materials for you, and I'm going to walk through absolutely every document we developed because they're all available to you, and we want you to know what you can use to give to your agencies and that they can use with consumers. So the first materials are general housing counseling materials. It is a brochure, a flyer, and a poster. And it's really just it's just really designed to provide general housing counseling information for anybody who's involved in the home buying process. This particular suite of materials has been translated into 10 different languages. The second are a couple of posters. They're called Beat the Odds. The posters highlight the value of housing counseling, so you can see some facts and figures there that tell you how valuable and how much you can benefit from using a housing counselor in the home buying process. Obviously, the statistic that shows that home buyers generally have 36 times the net worth of renters is pretty compelling. This poster was so popular that we made a second version, and that's the one you see on the right. We have distributed this poster to our 2,000 housing counseling agencies, and it too is available to you. The next suite of materials are for first-time home buyers. The first-time home buyer materials include brochures on credit, mortgage, budgeting, and of course, general housing counseling. We didn't just do materials, we also created a video. This is our first-time home buyer video. It's designed, we got a lot of comments from consumers about not knowing that they could use a housing counselor and not knowing where to start in the process. So the video is designed to help them understand the housing counseling process a little better and encourage them to make their first stop a housing counselor. So I don't have time to show the whole thing, but I can give you a peek.
Buying your first home? It's so exciting, but a bit overwhelming too. There are so many important things you need to know, and you've sure got a lot of questions. Questions like, where do I start? Your first important step is to visit your local HUD-approved housing counseling agency to help you figure out your home buying options or if purchasing a home is right for you. There are thousands of HUD-approved housing counseling agencies coast to coast. That's where you'll learn everything you need to know to make the home buying decisions that are right for you. After all, you'll have a trained, experienced housing counselor and awesome informative homebuyer workshops at your disposal. Your closest HUD-approved housing counseling agency is just a call or click away. Call 1-800-569-4287 or visit hud.gov/housing counseling. Your HUD-approved housing counseling agency and its counselors can be there to assist you in the process, to ensure that there are no surprises, and that you're fully prepared for the big day.
So the full video is on HUD Exchange. You can link to it, so feel free to take a look and to use it, to link to it and promote it. More materials. In addition to a video, we did some more brochures. When we developed our brochures, we wanted to develop brochures for every consumer group. So we did housing, general housing counseling, first-time home buyers. Now I'm showing you the ones for renters. Our renter materials cover renters' rights, leases, and budgeting. We also developed materials for default and foreclosure. So these are obviously for people who are struggling to pay their mortgage, materials that you can use to reach out to people who are experiencing default or foreclosure. And then the last materials are for, almost last, for consumer groups is for existing homeowners. We also got some comments in our focus groups that people who were in the focus groups and already owned a home kind of felt like they wish they had known about housing counseling. And we wanted to make sure they understood that even if they'd already purchased a home, there were things that a housing counselor could help them with. And so we developed this brochure to help them understand that a housing counselor can not just help you choose a home, but help you keep your home and figure out how to keep it throughout the life of the mortgage. And then in the last couple of years, disaster counseling and services have become far more important in the nation and in HUD. And so we developed some posters designed to help highlight services that housing counselors can provide for disaster preparedness and disaster recovery. So all of these materials can be found on HUD Exchange. I would encourage you to go take a look, order some, and use them. Because our goal here really is to encourage as many agencies as possible to use the materials, and so that we begin to present a unified face to consumers about housing counseling and begin to speak with the same voice about the benefits of housing counseling. The materials are free. There's a limited number that you can order, but there is no charge. Now, after we spent most of our time over the last 3 or 4 years doing the research, trying to figure out what people think about housing counseling, trying to get understand what some of the perceptions are and how we can add value and what messages we needed to identify. We also then developed the materials that I've just walked through, and we're just beginning the efforts of message dissemination. And I want to just highlight a few things that we've done over the last couple of years to disseminate the message, to help people see us differently by getting these materials out and talking more about the benefits of housing counseling. We, over the last 3 years, we've really used Homeownership Month at HUD to talk about housing counseling. And in 2016, we used National Homeownership Month to launch another video called Dare to Own the Dream. And that's this video of, it's a series of 3 videos about buying a house. It is a video that has been seen 10,000 times. It's been viewed 10,000 times. It's featured on USA.gov, and we urge you to look at it and to link to it. It's very well done, and people really enjoy watching it. That's what we did in 2016, and that was our first foray into social media. In 2018, we actually introduced the materials I've just walked through. So when HUD announced Homeownership Month, we had a link to these materials, and during that same year, we also mailed these materials to all of our HUD housing counseling agencies. So we're beginning to get the materials out into the hands of agencies. In 2019, A couple of these things have been mentioned earlier today. We did, HUD hosted for the first time ever a housing technology showcase. And that was on the National Mall, where they showcased houses, different housing technologies that might help you build more affordable housing. And we were one of only 2 offices in HUD invited to have a booth at the mall, and that's where we had a lot of local agencies come in and talk about housing counseling. All of the materials that I've walked through were there, as well as the agencies brought their own materials. And we got a great feedback. We really got good response. People really appreciated it. And then we did, we have over the last 3 years and had also held an internal home ownership employee fair, just as an opportunity to let HUD employees know the benefits of housing counseling, and that's also been quite successful. This has been mentioned a couple times, Building Tomorrow Together, the event we did in June. And I think from a communications and marketing perspective or a message dissemination perspective, the most important thing about this event that we held in June was that it was using an event to really sort of create buzz about your industry and help people understand who you are and appreciate who you are. And we were very lucky to get some great guests. Brian mentioned that Chris Herbert, from the director of Harvard's Joint Center for Housing, joined us. We had Ed DeMarco, who's head of the Housing Policy Council. Ed used to run FHFA. We had a number of housing counselors with us, Marita Rodriguez, who's head of NeighborWorks. So we had a great lineup, a good conversation. We've gotten lots of good feedback. And I think one of the more important things about this event is we had lenders, we had housing counselors, we had some regulators, we had everybody who's a stakeholder in this industry in the room talking about housing counseling in a really passionate way. So that event is on HUD Exchange, and I would encourage you to check it out. And we think it was a good first step in helping people view housing counseling in a different light and in our awareness and visibility efforts. We did launch a video or release a video at that event, and the video really takes a look at housing counseling over the last 50 years. And we just wanted to kind of take stock of the contribution housing counseling and counselors have made to homeowners and consumers. And so I don't have time to show the whole video, but I did want you to see a clip.
I would really love to see the program going in the next 50 years where the support for delivering housing counseling services across the suite of housing counseling services, be it from pre-purchase to post-purchase and fair housing and homelessness, that there is an abundance of resources that support that work, that we can take the money that the federal budget puts in the budget for U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and we're able to blend that with some private sector money so that there's a national pool that supports all housing counseling work at a much greater scale, and so that everyone who wants access to housing counseling can get it and resources aren't an issue.
There's been so many changes within the industry until it's unreal. Just being able to talk to you today and share the information in a video format, that's a humongous change in our industry. And then looking at all of the work that HUD has done over the past few years, making information available to the housing counseling industry, it's been just phenomenal to be able to see the amount of information that has come out of HUD, the training classes that they've made available to the industry, how easily accessible they are to our industry, how we can easily pick up a phone and make a phone call and reach someone and be able to talk out problems and situations that we may need help on.
So I've taken some time to walk through all the materials and to show you some clips of our events and our videos, but the whole point of this is that all of us join together in promoting housing counseling. With the 50th Building Tomorrow Together event and the video, the reverse mortgage counseling, Normla sent the links to the video and the entire event to their entire membership. And so we want to encourage you to do the same. We want to encourage you to help other people get a look at what housing counseling is doing. So now that I've covered all this material, I think it's really important that you understand how to use social media and why you should use social media. So I'm going to turn it over to Lauren to talk about using social media.
Thank you, Terry. Can you all hear me okay? Great. So as Terry mentioned, we can't really talk about message dissemination without discussing social media. And for the purposes of the Awareness and Visibility Initiative, we've really found social media to be an excellent way to engage our audiences. So when you think about traditional media, you think about a brand or a company, organization being in control of that message, and it becomes a very one-way conversation. But with social media, we really have the opportunity to directly interact with our audiences. In fact, the consumer is in control. They're in control of what they like on social media. They're in control of what they see in their feed. And especially with millennial audiences, what we're finding and what we're calling them is the DIY generation, right? The do-it-yourself generation, because they don't necessarily want to be told what to do. They want to find the information online and do with it what they will. And social media really enables them to do that. And then with traditional media, you're delivering a message in one space, right? So you drive past a billboard on a freeway or you see an ad in a bus shelter. But with social media, you really need to have a message that resonates, because it's not possible to just insert your message and walk away and hope people engage. And so with social media, it's oftentimes more effective to see what's trending. And I'm sure you all have heard that term, right? So going online to see what's trending in housing and then inserting your conversation into that marketplace, and so that people are actually now engaging with your content. With traditional media, we are taught that it's all about frequency, right? I think it's the magic number is 7 times someone sees something and they'll finally engage with it. But a little bit different with social media, because it's really more about adapting your message to make it fit and to make it relevant. And then with traditional media, we're looking to educate our public, which is good. But with social media, you've got to take it a step further and really engage your audience. So you've got to get in the midst of those conversations and really making sure that you're looking at what people are like, what your audience likes and what they're actually engaging in, with what kind of content they're actually engaging with. And so those are some of the ways, some of the differences that we see with traditional and social media. For those of you who may not be as well-versed in the different channels, I like to give this example. Social media explained using one of my favorite foods, donuts. Hopefully everybody already had lunch. This isn't going to make you really hungry. So if you can imagine yourself with this donut in front of you, you take a photo of yourself, a selfie with the donut, and you're on Instagram, then here's a photo of me and my donut. If you're on Facebook, I like donuts. If you're on LinkedIn, my skills include donut eating. And if you're on Twitter, I am eating a hashtag donut. So I hope that helps to kind of clear up the confusion. I know there's so many different social media channels, and it is changing almost daily. So in terms of engaging consumers through social media, one of the things that we found is that you can literally meet consumers where they are. Research tells us that about 80% of all home buyers are searching online, and this does not matter. I should say, I would say home buyers are searching online, and this doesn't matter where they are in the home buying process. So they could be looking to buy their first home, they could be existing homeowners, it does not matter. 80%. And over 84% of all first-time home buyers are on Facebook. And I'm going to get into Facebook a little bit more in the next coming slides. So it's not that we're abandoning our outreach. Terry showed you, some of the brochures and some of the posters and the videos, but this is really an opportunity to complement those efforts and to use what we have with social media to push the message even further along and to truly amplify it. So one of the questions that always comes to mind, and we get this question a lot, is, are businesses using Facebook? Are businesses using Instagram and Twitter? And the answer to that question is yes. We know that everybody is on Facebook, looking for interpersonal communication, but businesses are also using it. About 93% of not-for-profit businesses are using social media to engage with their audiences, and that's compared to 87% of business-to-business organizations and then 86% of business-to-consumer. So you are in good company if you're using social media. And if you're not, we'll show you how. So one other point is that we know that our consumers are social. So this chart really puts into perspective the use of social media channels. It may surprise you a little bit. So these percentages were taken from US adults who are using the internet. 73% say they use YouTube, and 68% are saying that they use Facebook. So that's a pretty high percentage, and I'm sure some of you are even surprised that YouTube is outpacing Facebook. But I would say Facebook is probably the most widely used channel by businesses to connect with consumers. And one of the reasons is because you can virtually reach any age, any income bracket. You can see the chart on the screen. You know, we're looking at 88% of adults between the ages of 18 to 29 are on Facebook, and we're looking at 84% of adults ages 30 to 49. So that spans probably 3 generations of people that could probably use housing counseling in some way, whether they're renting or looking to buy their first home. So knowing the popularity of social media, we really took our job seriously in terms of helping housing counseling agencies to utilize these services. And so we developed a social media 101 toolkit. We developed actually a 4-part webinar series that HCAs could take. So I don't know if some of your agencies have taken advantage of this, but this is available still on HUD Exchange. And you can listen to the webinar, you can download the toolkit, and really help to establish your own social media channels. And then knowing the difficulty that webinar trainings have, you know, you're sitting there and you have the best intentions to sit through this webinar, and then your email blows up or somebody calls you or something happens in the office and you get pulled away. So we also took our show on the road, and we offered our social media training to all of our training partners, and RCAC and NCRC, hey Sony, took us up on that offer, and we created a 2-day Reaching Your Consumers Through Social Media training series, and you can see all the cities that we had the pleasure of going to conduct these trainings. And it was really an opportunity for us to bridge that gap between the housing counselors and the consumers. And so one of the ways that you can engage your audience through social media is to celebrate. I think that oftentimes we think we have to be so serious and, you know, we can't have fun using social media, and that's just not true. I think the more engaging you make your content, the more the consumers are going to want to post and share and like and all of that. And so we knew that HUD was celebrating 50 years, and so we had a happy birthday celebration for HUD, and we invited intermediaries, housing counseling agencies to create a happy birthday message using a smartphone, you know, of themselves or of their staff, and to enter those videos in, and we created a compilation, and we got 40 entries, and some of you all went all out. I mean, we had people that created like puppet shows with little tiny puppet houses. We had people bake birthday cakes, and it was just a lot of fun. It was a great way to just celebrate, and I would encourage you all, if you have milestones coming up, if you have anniversaries of your own, if you're doing a grand opening of some kind, this is a way to engage your audience and get them excited about what you're excited about. And we can also use social media to inform. And so what you see on the screen is an actual sample tweet that we posted on disaster recovery. So we know, as I think we heard in an earlier session, how this is obviously a really important topic. And so this is a way to get in front of HUD's 288,000 Twitter followers to talk about disaster recovery. And you can also use social media to educate. So again, this is an actual example of a Facebook post where we were giving consumer audiences some information on rental counseling. So one of the things that is always nice to hear in the industry is when we embark on something new, like social media for the purposes of housing counseling, we like to hear from our partners, you know, what their experiences are as well. And so we had a little case study with our friends from the National Housing Resource Center. So Ellie, if you're here, we thank you. There she is. And so one of the things that the question that we often get from people is, well, how do I use social media to get people out to actual live events? So that's great that people follow me. That's great that they like my content, but how do I actually get people out there? And so NHRC reported that when they were promoting events using Facebook, they saw a great uptick in attendance. And I think that's great news and encouraging for all of you. 65% of their registrations came from Facebook. 35% of attendees heard about the event on Facebook. And then in terms of their content, when they posted content about down payment assistance and credit score information, it received the most engagement. So I think that's a really good example of how you can use social media for something that's actually happening when you want people to do some kind of action, like come to an event. So I think we've all been talking long enough, and now it's time for you to answer some questions. So we do have a Mentimeter question for you.
Thanks, Lauren. So the next question that we have is, which social media platforms are you using to engage consumers? This is also another word cloud, which means that the more popular an answer, the bigger it will appear in front of you. So let's see what you folks say. Hopefully you're logging in. Again, that code is in the upper right-hand corner, menti.com.
I figured.
Only 7 reporting, though. Again, there's like 59, 60 of you that are participating in all Mentimeters. So we might want to give it a couple minutes.
Okay, it's 18, 19.
Somebody has the nice nickname for Facebook, FB. Instagram. Pinterest. I'm not sure I saw that in your presentation, right? Ooh, we want to find out who's using Pinterest. That's interesting. LinkedIn is bigger. Twitter. Agency homepage. Yeah, don't forget about the tried and true, right? Okay, great. I think we have a good picture.
Okay.
And I'll turn it over to Jennifer.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. As Lauren has said, I am the Executive Director of HomeSmart New York. HomeSmart New York is a New York statewide coalition of HUD-approved housing counseling agencies. So we have over 80 agencies that are members statewide. So you can imagine New York is a very large and diverse state, and we have all different types of agencies in all different communities throughout the state. Part of our mission is that we manage a statewide referral engine that's linked to our state HFA, Sunny May, and the Realtors Association, NYSAR. So when consumers are looking at buying a home and looking at mortgage products or looking for a realtor, they will actually be linked to HomeSmart New York to find help with a housing counselor. But one of our mission there is to market housing counseling and market this search engine that we manage. Unfortunately, we have no marketing budget. So I'm sure some of you are familiar with that. And we're very short-staffed. We have not even one full-time employee to do the work of HomeSmart New York. So I'm of the school of saying, if I have to do it, I'm just going to do it. So I started doing it. I had, as I said, very limited resources, and I have to say my first efforts were not very good. But, you know, I plugged at it, and I kept getting better. And I want to say I'm just like most of you in that I'm overwhelmed sometimes with the amount of work that I have to do, but I have to figure out ways to get it out there. So, you know, just get out there and you plug along. So I was lucky that HomeSmart New York also has an annual conference every year, and I was able to bring in somebody to do a social media training for the network, and I learned an awful lot from her. Her name's Laura Royer. I don't know if anybody else has ever taken her class, but if you get the opportunity, you should. I made a commitment at that time that I was going to post regularly to Facebook. I decided Facebook was where I was most comfortable at the time, so I chose Facebook. And what I do now is I set aside one day, usually once a month, and I create a series of memes because social media, people are visual. They don't want to read stories, and they want to see something that they can absorb immediately. So I created memes. I was very lucky in that I have a mascot. As you saw our symbol, we have a little owl. His name is Homer. So I was able to take Homer the owl and use him to advertise housing counseling. Like say, every month I pick a topic. I have people come up to me often at parties and they say to me, "What do you do, Jennifer? Something with housing?" Right? I've been doing housing counseling and housing counseling related work since 1994, and most of my friends probably think I'm a realtor. So, you know, I was like, how can I get this across to people? What do we do? So my first campaign was Ask a Housing Counselor, which featured questions people might have about homeownership broadly, and then I used the hashtag Ask a Housing Counselor for that for a while. Then we moved on to Housing Counseling Works because people really liked that. I made a Housing Counseling Works meme, and it was like my most popular meme. And so we talked about what you do in a housing counseling session. You know, it begins with a budget. You know, we covered everything. We talked about action plans, all the things that we actually do in housing counseling, try to get across to our audience that what would happen if you went into a session. Because that's the other thing you find is people Google. If you're taking a Zumba class, you Google what happens in Zumba class. You know, everybody has to know beforehand. We've done speaking mortgagees. That was pretty popular. You know, what's the pity on that? How much is the PMI? That was fun because Homer got to be a professor for that. He had a blackboard and we put the definitions up. We talked about the benefits of home ownership. A real popular one was Homer with like 6 dogs and 3 cats, and it said, you can have pets. We went on to also, what I found is another real popular thing is recognizing holidays. People love holidays, and Homer is a multicultural owl. He's of all faiths and backgrounds and ethnicities, and we celebrate everything. Because we are New York, and we are everything, so it's, you know, it's fun, and that gets shared a lot. As I said, I committed myself 2 memes a week. That's only 8 to 10 memes a month. It's not a lot, and quite often if I'm doing something like what is housing counseling, I can get 20 of them. You know, so I just do them and I schedule them. To create the memes, I use a program called Canva, canva.com. It gives me for free. I can dress Homer up as all kinds of great things. I then use TwitTimer. And there's others. There's Hootsuite. There's lots of them. TwitTimer is free for 10 memes, and it lets me schedule ahead of time. And I recently started doing Twitter also. I do the same thing on both social media, and I just put it in, schedule it. While I was on the train on my way up here today, my social media posted. I don't have to think about it. So it's not like, oh my God, I got to do this every week. And, you know, I got to do it every day. You don't have to. And what I can do then is if something's breaking, I have a meme with an action alert, like if I need people to call their assembly people or, you know, do something for us, then I can put those things out. And I also I check everybody else's social media, share their stuff as we go along to kind of pad it a little, but no matter what, I could be on a beach in Bali and my social media is going out. So I think we're going to show some of our media. So this is Homer, and he likes to avoid predators. He's always prepared. So here we have him, our predator is a shark in this one, and he's deep sea diving. I really liked the pitchfork. And I do have a lot of fun with these. But I also have made him a cave owl and put him on a background with dinosaurs, like taking a picture of animatronic dinosaurs or something and put him there with his club. So you can do a lot of fun things with predatory lending. Again, he's the center of my design always, and no matter what. And then we always also put the Home Smart New York logo in there. This is one of my my holidays. This was a popular one. Everybody wants spring to come, so we put this out on the first day of spring, with spring into home ownership. Every one of these, we put our website on, and then in my messaging, I put the link to the search engine, and I'll talk about what a HUD-approved housing counseling agency does. I've tried to avoid using the term housing counselor, because half my network calls themselves advisors or something else too, so I just stick with that HUD-approved housing counseling agency, and try to keep that messaging really clear. I have a lot of trouble with Twitter because they don't let me say much, and I'm not good at being short. So this is an eHome America ad. We also have a network-wide link to eHome America. So when it's snowing or very cold outside, we do the Don't Want to Go Outside campaign, and that's Homer doesn't want to leave his fire, but he's still going to buy a house. I always say, God, he's got a nice apartment though, doesn't he? This is, again, linking it to eHome America and letting people know that they can take a class online. So basically, what I've learned, some of the things that I've learned is that to start, make your, So you want to look at ways that you're going to be consistent. You're going to be consistent from post to post, use the similar language, state your purpose clearly. I'm usually 100% always driving people to my search engine or to my eHome America link, so that I always have a link in my text. My goal is to get people to understand what housing counseling is, so I'm always writing about it to them. I use words you, yours. Do you want to own a home? It's your home. Do you want to keep your home? Words like that, so that I'm talking to them, not at them. And I have that strong graphical element. As I said, I don't know what I would do without my owl. He's been great and a lot of fun for me, although I actually got some blowback in the beginning about dressing him up too much from some people, but they're no fun. So it's really good if you have an image, or if you can create an image. I think you could use something as simple as like the Keith Haring style outline of a person. It doesn't have to necessarily be an animal, but something that attracts people and is generic and makes people see themselves, and keeping it very visual, as I said, with your memes. And then I think one of the most difficult things is to build an audience. Home Smart New York was limited in its number of people that were following. I think when we started, I had about 60 people following us, mostly housing counselors. I realized quickly that I had a dual audience. I had my network. I wanted to create memes that my network could share, that would drive people to their organizations as well. But my audience was also future home buyers and existing homeowners in New York State, which is a large audience. And I had to really think of how I was going to create things that were share-worthy. There's algorithms, especially in Facebook. Facebook knows what you like, and Facebook shows you what you like. So the more people that like and share your content, the more people that they're going to show it to that like and share similar content. I don't have a background in marketing, but you'll see that if you've been on Facebook and you Google something on Amazon, and like 5 minutes later they're advertising, red parkas or whatever it was that you looked at. They're watching you and they're knowing what you like and follow. So it's very important that you have people engage. And I say, get your staff to like your content, like your page, and to retweet things if you're using Twitter, that everybody that's your commitment. Everybody's going to share the content. Another great tip is at classes, seminars, and events like this, ask everybody to take out their phone. I'm going to ask you all, take out your phones. Please go on Facebook, go to Home Smart New York, and like us. Please like us. I feel like Sally Field at this. Please like us. Because the more people that like us, then Facebook goes, ooh, there's something going on here. And I will like you back. I will not only will HomeSmart like you and your organization, but I, Jennifer Murphy, will like your organization. I will share your content because we need to do this together so that we can build up a strong presence so that next time I go to a party, people say, oh, you run a housing counseling program, don't you? So if you guys could do that for me, and I would say, please feel free. There's only so much that you can say about housing counseling. I Googled what does a housing counselor do, things like that, in case I've missed something. So feel free to look at my ideas and take some of my ideas. Trust me, I'm going to take some of yours. So, have fun with it. It's social media. It's what's supposed to be fun, and I think people go on it for fun. Maybe on Twitter people go on for some of the heavy stuff, but I think Facebook is people like it to be light and fun, and I think when I have fun is I see other people have fun too.
So we'll take some questions now. That last slide says you are the ambassador, and it just means we're looking to you now. We've told you about the materials. We've given you some information about using Facebook. So we hope that you will use the materials, and we especially hope that you will start to engage in social media and promote housing counseling. Any questions?
Hello.
Hello.
I don't really have a question.
Okay.
I'm Ellie Pepper with National Housing Resource Center. I wanted to drill down a little bit more on some of the data from our events. So some of you in the room have been part of our events, so you know what I'm talking about. But we at NHRC have been doing events around the country that bring together in different markets housing counseling, HUD-approved housing counseling agencies and other agencies in the area to do events to really put housing counseling out front. And we're really lucky because we have money to do the work, and we have a marketing budget because it's done under a settlement that Deutsche Bank entered into with the Department of Justice under the Obama administration. So some of those numbers that Lauren talked about, thank you, Lauren, were from that event. And a couple other things to be clear about is that 65% of the people who registered to come to the event, as was mentioned, came from Facebook. And 95 to 97% of them are people who had never heard about housing counseling before. So Facebook, and this is all Facebook. So Facebook was really reaching an audience who hadn't heard about us before. 35% of them then came and attended the event. So we lost people along the way. But the good news is that all of the organizations had all that registration information. And we asked for contact information, and people gave it. So those housing counseling organizations were able to then outreach after the event to those potential home buyers. You talked a little bit about a couple of the things that were most engaging. But the other thing at the most recent event that we did an experiment. We asked a question in the event, and we just asked, what do you see as the biggest barrier to buying a home? And that got an incredible amount of engagement. So asking a question, encouraging people to get engaged. And then I just wanted to talk about the return on investment for marketing, because we all are struggling for marketing dollars, and if we have any at all. And overall, the numbers were that Facebook was about $50 per attendee. This is average over 6 events across the country over 2 years. TV was $140 per attendee, and we only used it once, and that was in Tampa for an interview that was on a very popular morning show. And radio comes in at a whopping $970 per attendee. Now, I will say that there's been a couple of organizations that have recently done pretty successful large events using only radio. And so Home Free USA is one of those, and Simone is here. And we learned a little bit about how to message. So as much as we're trying to figure out how to message on Facebook, I think on radio as well. And the last thing I'll say is don't discount that face-to-face handing of the document, of the flyer to somebody. Melinda Opperman can tell you that they learned, and we learned in the Inland Empire of California, that was one of the key ways to really get the word out. Facebook wasn't quite as big in that market.
Thank you.
So there
Thank
it is.
you.
Sorry.
Very helpful information.
Hi, Karen Hoskins, NeighborWorks. Terry,
Yes.
in your presentation, you indicated you reviewed some of the findings, and part of the findings were that there's a negative perception of the term counselor. And I think we all know that.
Yeah.
You know, that's not anything
Not
new.
new.
Counselor, housing counseling. But yet the materials that you've shared all reference either housing counseling or counselor. So my question is, where are we in that conversation? Because it's one that's been going on for years, changing the name formally. Where's the OHC in terms of that effort right now? If you could speak to that.
So where are we and where is the OHC? Might be two different things, but let me just say that from the perspective of OHC, counseling and counselor are part of our statute. And so it would not be possible for us to change the name without going through the legislative process. And while might be something that we would want to pursue, obviously that has to be a priority of people other than just the leadership of OHC. So that's a discussion we are still having internally. I do not think that means that the industry can't have a conversation on its own. You mentioned that a lot of your folks already call themselves something other than counselor. They call themselves advisors. And I think if that is of interest, it's quite possible that OHC could facilitate a conversation about what happens in the industry, if the industry might like to move more forward with a different term. We can't dictate what you call yourselves. We could certainly promote a conversation and talk about options. I think anything happening at the statutory level would be much more long-term, and so we would need to kind of think about that on a separate track.
Hi. So my name is Bruce Marks with NACA. So one of the things I think that, you know, the marketing piece is important, and I think the material you have is very nice and, you know, good stuff. I think, you know, the best way to do it is by word of mouth. And I think that's what, you know, as the counseling agencies, what we have to do, you know, a better job of is doing the very comprehensive counseling and to document that counseling so there's an added value. Because I think there's a real problem in, you know, we shouldn't have to convince people that it's the right place to go. It should be by word of mouth. And if I can give an example of that, so, you know, we do these big events with NACA, through NACA. So we do them every 2 weeks. And we get, like, the one we did in New York City about 6 weeks ago, we had over 12,000 people. Hampton Roads, Virginia, over 3,000. You know, Worcester, Mass, 3,000, and just around the country, and it's all word of mouth. It's all word of mouth. And I think that's the best way to do it. So, you know, I think as a counseling agency in your agencies, in your areas, it should be that people come to you because other people tell everybody. And one of the examples, if you don't believe it, I mean, we're doing an event starting tomorrow in Baltimore. So we're there for 5 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. We'll have over 8,000 home buyers over those 5 days. And it's all 100% is word of mouth because we don't do any advertising. We don't do any outreach. It's just people know that it's the place to come. And it shouldn't be just particular to NACA. I think it should be particular to every counseling agency because people are doing good work out there. That is word of mouth. And you tell the people coming through, spread it to other people as well. And obviously, everybody's welcome to come to our Baltimore event. It is transparent. We go from 8 in the morning till after midnight every day for 5 days, starting tomorrow, and it's at the Radisson Hotel, Inner Harbor in Baltimore. So please come and see it and join us. Thank you. Right. Well, we have an office in Baltimore, but it's word of mouth, so the drumbeat in the neighborhoods within the community has come to NACA. And so the point I'm trying to make is you do good work and you provide a real benefit for people, for home buyers or others, renters, people will come and they'll spread the word to other people. I think if we have to market it and convince people to come, that's saying that we're not doing as good a job as we should by doing the services. So we'll get 10,000 people over 5 days just because people say it's the place to come, by word of mouth, by the drumbeat in the neighborhood, without any outreach, without any emails, without any stuff that you're talking about. No, I mean, we have 2.7 million members. So we have members, but, it's joined. So they pay a nominal fee of $25 per household per year, only because lawyers say you have to charge somebody something. So it's a token amount on that. But it's no different than what you guys are doing as counseling agencies, whether you call someone a member or a client, it's the same concept on that, yes. And just so you know, during the event, what we do is we take the whole process of someone buying a house and we combine it into one day. So, someone will come in, they'll do a 3 or 4 hour workshop. Step 1, step 2, they will upload all their documents through our CMS system that you'll see tomorrow. Step 3 is they'll meet with a housing counselor. And step 4, they'll be underwritten to see whether they're pre-approved for a mortgage. So we take that whole process that sometimes takes a long time, and we do it all in one day, and then we do it for 5 days. So people, if they don't have all their stuff, they can come back any of those 5 days, and it's all free.
Thank you, Bruce. Those are
Sure.
extraordinary numbers, so it's good to know that you're able to get that kind of reach. I want to encourage people to come to the microphone if they have a question. We've got about 5 minutes left, and just a couple of other comments. I think it's important to recognize, I think Bruce and NACA have an established brand, and some of us maybe don't have quite the level of branding that they have, and so hopefully some of the tools we've talked about today will help you build that brand. And I think in some people's minds, I think word of mouth is great, but for some generations, especially the younger ones, I think social media is the new word of mouth. So just keep those things in mind as well. Any more questions?
I don't think we're saying that it's the only outreach available. It's a tool in your toolbox is how I look at it. I mean, I've been, as I said, I've been around a long time, and I still like to do grassroots outreach. I would like to go to the churches and the community groups and talk to people and tell them what housing counseling is too.
Good afternoon. My name is Veronica DePatti with the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. I just wanted to share an idea that some of my smaller subgrantees agencies are using in partnership with their marketing efforts, especially when internally they don't have the financial bottom line to be able to afford, as well as their staff or expertise in-house. Some of my smaller agencies have reached out to their local community colleges and universities because they have marketing departments, students who are obtaining marketing degrees, and what they have done is they have reached out to the colleges for internship opportunities. These university students are willing to volunteer their time to increase their portfolio of experience, which will lend them well upon graduation. This comes as free labor and ideas and visions, and so that has proved very, very well. So I just wanted to share that idea.
Thank you. That's an excellent idea. Any other questions?
I'm on the far end of the millennial spectrum, so full disclosure.
Can you move a little closer to the microphone? Great,
Can you hear me
thanks.
better?
Yes.
There we go. With social media,
there naturally comes a saturation level. So like in your professional opinion, when is it too much, or are there signs where you can see where people, they're interested for a while, but you're putting too much out there so they feel like they're getting spammed at a certain point? I was just wondering if you could have any comments for us on how to walk that line.
Yeah, I have some comments, and I think Jennifer can probably share as well. I mean, what we typically would advise, and I should mention, we are in the process of developing social media content for the housing counseling agencies to use. And when we give them a month's worth of content, we're actually recommending that they don't post more than twice a week.
Yeah, I find that I've found that twice a week has been good, and I do Monday and Wednesday, assuming that people are not really interested in buying a house on Friday, I guess. But I mean, some of the things that I have found is if I tag somebody, that I get crazy large numbers of people sharing and looking at things. So, you know, if I can tag an agency, or better yet, tag the people that work at that agency, those types of things really get engagement. I've had some real flops though too. You know, they had this thing where with arrows and pointing to your profile picture on Facebook, saying different things, and I tried like I'm a first-time home buyer, and nobody wanted it. And it's like, yeah, I thought people would be proud. I bought my first house this year. No. So, you know, it's catch as catch can. And some things people are going to see and they're going to get, like, it's like 60 seconds. They see it and they engage in it. And that's why I said before that it's the visuals, you know, and being funny, trying to be funny.
And I would just say that, to add on to what Jennifer said, I don't know that there's a perfect model. I think that you just kind of have to test it out and see if you feel like people are feeling like you're not getting as much engagement, they feel like they're being spammed. If you're posting too often, then scale back a little bit. I think you just have to find the sweet spot that works for you.
You'll also see on Facebook as insights, and they'll let you know how many people unfollowed you. The other thing I see is how many people go from Facebook to my website after a post comes out. And I also get more, I get Facebook messages to Homer asking, you know, questions after. So people don't always like it, but they engage in other ways. So you got to follow and they'll tell you, this is performing 85% better than all of your other posts. You know, it's like, what did I do? Sometimes it's like, I don't know.
All right, guys, that pretty much takes care of our presentation. I was remiss, and I mentioned Lauren and who she was, but I did not note that Creative Marketing Resources is the firm that OHC engaged to lead this marketing effort. So I just want to make sure you understand everybody's role. Thank you, and our time is up.
I just have one announcement. I just wanted to make sure that you folks knew that it was break time, and we have a 15-minute break. And when you come back, you have two choices. The first choice is to come back here and hear the best practices in overseeing and certifying your network. So another certification breakout, but just on best practices. And the second one, which is next door in C, is the 9902 data visualization work. So we'll see you shortly at 3:30.